Welcome Warhammer fans, this is Bonepile Miniatures. Today I wanted to make a video about making river terrain out of Plasticard. Now the process for making rivers out of Plasticard is very easy. So this video is going to focus less on how to and more on why do. But first off, for those of you who don't know, Plasticard, like I'm showing here, is really just thin sheets of semi-flexible plastic about the thickness of a credit card. Here I have a sheet that is 8 by 10 inches, and the packet I bought came with about 20 or so sheets in it. Plasticard is a fantastic option for crafting, including Warhammer rivers, as I will explain throughout this video. So in the Warhammer hobby, I really think that rivers are a bit of a troublesome project. The trouble with them is deciding how to represent them. I'm not sure that there really is a perfect option out there, and I did a lot of searching and found different crafting approaches, products on the market, and so forth, but they each had their different drawbacks, and for a long time I was not really sure what I wanted to do with them. But not too long ago I found myself creating a banner out of Plasticard for one of my units. And the idea came to me that I should make some rivers out of Plasticard. And so I weighed the pros and cons and I decided to give it a try. So let me show you my results. So there are really only two steps to this process. Step one is simply take a sheet of Plasticard and cut out segments of your river. Cut the segments in random shapes. Make some thinner, make some wider, make some curved, and make some straight. The number of segments you make probably depends upon the size of the battlefield that you typically play on. So I usually play on a 4 by 8 foot table, so I cut up plenty of them. I don't remember exactly, but I think I used 3 to 5 sheets for all the segments I made. Now we are on to step 2, which is to paint the segments. I painted mine just a typical blue color with some random grays and greens to represent rocks and such. And I purposely painted my blue color a little streaky with the brush to kind of give it that flowing effect, and I think it worked out alright. But I really wanted to just give them a basic paint job. These are more conceptual rivers than anything else for me. I didn't put a lot of artistic flavor into them, but for me that was enough. I just needed something that looked like a river, and if someone wanted to put a little more time into these and make a more artistic impression, I'm sure they could. But I just wanted to keep mine really basic, and that's not just out of laziness. I'm going to show you why I made them this way here shortly. So that is the end of the how-to portion of this video. Now I want to spend the rest of the time focusing on the why-do and show you my results. So here are several of my river segments all laid out into a full-length river. And this is sitting on a 4 by 8 foot table, and I'm also using an FLG mat. Now the first reason on my list of why do is that it is very easy to make a lot of river segments. And I think it is relatively inexpensive as well. Now I like having plenty of terrain. I'm one of those weird players that likes terrain. And I wanted enough river segments that I could extend a river the entire length of my table and still have some pieces left over in case I wanted to bring in a tributary or even make a second small stream. And to me that is really one of the downsides to a lot of river crafting approaches out there. In my opinion, that's especially true of approaches that strive to make 3D realistic looking rivers. You know, they may look great, but it is possible that you will never complete enough river segments before you burn out. But with using Plasticard, it really doesn't take much more time to do 20 segments than it does to make 10 segments. It's really just not that much of a time sink. And because of that, you will have the energy to make a wide variety of shapes. And looking at this river from a bird's eye view, I think the footprint looks quite realistic. Yes, the artwork lacks, but the waviness and the random patterns make it look good in my opinion. There's a lot of so-called modular rivers that I've seen on the market that look just so rigid, like a canal or a ditch. And the pieces still have to connect together, so there's a loss in that irregular and natural look that I can have with this Plasticard. Now the second reason on my why-do list is the thinness or the height of the river material. To me, the height is effectively 0. This is essentially a 2D river, or 2 dimensions. There's really no height to the river. And this approach is really contrary to the popular trend to have all of our terrain 3D and lifelike. Now, of course, I don't argue that 3D terrain looks nice, but I argue that there are advantages to having some terrain pieces in 2D, and this includes rivers. So just look at the non-existent vertical relief to this river. It is as flat to the table as you are going to make it. Now cardboard and chipboard are not going to lay this flat to the table. Maybe cardstock paper would produce similar results, but cardstock will not be as durable as Plasticard, and there will still be a bit of edge curl on cardstock that really gets annoying. But the Plasticard lays so flat to the table that it almost looks like it is below the table surface. It almost looks sunk in like a river would. Also look at how I am able to overlap the ends of the segments. I can overlap pieces with almost no additional vertical relief, and that makes it so nice to arrange the overlaps however I want them. I can spin the segments around in any direction to make curves or junctions, and if I am trying to mate 2 segments but the difference in the width seems too abrupt, I can overlap them in a way that seems more realistic. I could overlap half of a segment with another segment if I needed to, in order to achieve a certain result. So I think this flat characteristic makes a Plasticard river potentially more modular than anything else you could ever come up with. This will produce a literal infinite amount of variety to your rivers, just because there are no restrictions on how to connect segments together. That advantage alone is enough to sell me on this method. And now I want to point out the reason that I chose not to paint very much detail on any of my river segments. Because it seems to me that the more detailed the paint job, the more it would matter how you mate the segments together. For example, if you went to a lot of effort to paint a detailed shoreline along these segments, then it would matter a great deal how you mated them and overlapped the segments. The shorelines would have to line up in order to look right. So I knew that with the amount of modular variety I was looking for, that details like shorelines and brush would not work so well. So therefore, that's the reason I just painted plain blue water with just a few rocks here and there. Clearly it does not matter how the in-stream rocks and boulders align between segments because they are meant to be random. But since shorelines are not random, I decided to leave those off. And now let me show you another reason why I decided to not paint shorelines on these segments. Not only did I want the modular ability to overlap segments on their endpoints, but I also wanted to have the ability to have modular ability on the lateral dimension. Check that out. Notice how I was able to double the width of my river along that nearest reach. With no shorelines to stop me, I can increase the widths of my river at my pleasure. There might be games that I want a really mighty river on the table that could possibly engulf an entire unit at a time. This is a wonderful ability of Plasticard. There is modular ability to infinity, not only in length and travel course, but also in width. They overlap on the lateral edges just as easily as they do on the ends. And there is no 3D river product on the market that can do this. Look how I can just keep going. Now there's enough width here that it looks like an in-stream pond. Once again, there's no shorelines to stop me from doing this. I can just keep going. Now I've added another tributary to this pond. It is looking really good now. Like I said, I don't think there's any other product or project that is out there that is as modular as this, except for maybe paper. But like I said, paper has durability issues and also edge curl and fraying problems. You don't deal with that with Plasticard. Let me go back a few steps to the double wide river. And I've also placed a unit of 20 Tomb King skeletons on the table with it. I'm showing you another reason on the why do list with this photo. One reason that I decided to go with Plasticard rivers is some of the advantages it has in gameplay. Warhammer is a very rules-heavy game, as you know. There's models that have special rules, keywords, even terrain has specific definitions and rules. Look at the relationship of this unit to the river. Even though the river has an irregular shape and the edge is wavy, it is clearly defined. The skeletons in this scene are not in the river. The Plasticard has a sharp, crisp edge. It is easy to see if the models are in the river or not, and that helps a lot with gameplay. It is easy to see what is happening. The river is sharply defined in physical space on the game board. Another great feature to Plasticard. And now let me move on to another excellent feature of Plasticard rivers. Often in gameplay, a unit will come into contact with a river, and it may be a mysterious river. In the Warhammer world, there could be a wide variety of types of rivers. Your unit could encounter a river and find that it is not just a normal river. Some kind of curse or blessing may have been pronounced upon it. Or maybe there is some kind of a natural disturbance going on. Now, wouldn't it be fun to find a way to represent these river varieties in gameplay? This can be easily done with Plasticard. One of the awesome features of Plasticard is that you can paint the surface of the plastic, and guess what? The paint will not bleed through to the other side of the sheet. So, what does that allow us to do? It allows us to paint the reverse side of the sheet. Voila! I flipped my river segments to the opposite side, and now I have a tainted river. And since I'm using the same segments as I was using for the normal river, I can keep the river traveling in the same course as I did on the opposite side. The edges of the stream are not in the exact same places, but at least the river is traveling in the same direction as before, and it is the same width. Painting the opposite side not only increases the modular ability of my rivers, but it also saves me in the amount of Plasticard I need to create special rivers like this tainted river. Of course, this tainted river could be multi-purpose. It could be a river of tar, a chaos river, or a poison river, or whatever I need it to be. It is clearly tainted in some way, and it is no longer a normal river. Painting both sides of a river segment is a great advantage of Plasticard. You could maybe carefully do this with chipboard or cardstock paper, but I still think your paint will bleed through here and there, and even cardboard might be alright to paint both sides, but cardboard just doesn't lay as flat and is not as durable as Plasticard. And there's also major issues with cardboard fraying and not overlapping well. But now that we've opened this can of worms with making a special kind of river, like this tainted one, what if I wanted to make more varieties of rivers? Yes, you could go through the trouble of painting green rivers and purple rivers or whatever you could come up with to represent different types. And painting both sides of the Plasticard would make it possible to preserve some Plasticard material doing this. But with all the varieties of rivers you could think of, they could start adding up and making this river creation project more expensive than you originally intended. So I also thought of a way to increase the varieties of rivers I could represent on the table without using my entire packet of Plasticard. I'm going to take advantage again of how easily Plasticard can be stacked vertically due to how thin it is. So this photo shows that I cut smaller pieces of Plasticard that now I can lay on top of the full-sized river segments. I left these pieces white in order to represent ice or snow. Now this normal-looking river could be a frozen river or laden with ice flows. This is a simple and cost-effective solution to modifying river types. And I only used one sheet of Plasticard to make all those ice chunks. Once again, the great advantage of this is that the river stays exactly the same shape and travel direction as before I placed these ice chunks on it. This makes it easy to modify a river type even without budging the existing river segments. And of course, these smaller pieces can also be painted on both sides. Here I just flipped these pieces over to the reverse side, which I painted orange. And now I have a fire river. Or maybe it's a lava river or magic river or something else I need it to be. I painted some of them on the reverse side a mix of purple and green. So these are clearly some kind of a poison river. The options available are limited only by your imagination. So now I want to make a final point on the list of why do plastic rivers. I want to demonstrate it in conjunction with this forest terrain located near the river. Let's imagine I want to move this unit of skeletons through the forest and across the river to the other side. You will notice that the way I have modeled the forest is both a combination of 2D and 3D. The forest has a base plate, which I cut out of sheet metal. That is the 2D feature of the forest. It has a length and a width, but it has no effective height. But I have those trees which have magnets on the bottom, and they provide some 3D enhancement. But since the trees are magnetic, they can be moved around to allow the unit of skeletons to pass through. But even though I moved the trees, the base plate of the forest does not move. This provides an unchangeable definition of where the forest exists on the physical space of the battlefield. And with the trees moved out of the way, my models can easily slide across the surface of the forest without any hindrance. This is a fantastic feature for gameplay. I have this nice looking forest, but I can also move my units through it without any trouble. Now when my units have moved out of the forest, I can place the trees back where I had removed them. I really enjoy creating terrain that balances both aesthetics and playability. I've seen too many situations where someone moves a unit into a forest and cannot actually physically place the unit in the forest. They have to balance the unit on top of the trees because they're immovable. Or they have to place the unit to the side of the forest, and then we all have to pretend that they're inside of it. Or like with most players, they just avoid the terrain altogether because it's just too impractical to play with. But with the forests I have on my table, they can not only look decent, but they're easy to play with. Units can move in and out, and the forest has a clear, legal definition on the battlefield, regardless of what I do with the trees. And I absolutely love this type of terrain. I took this same concept into creating these rivers. Playability is easily among my top 3 considerations when I think of terrain making options. These skeletons can easily move across this river. They don't get hung up on anything. It is just a simple effort to slide them across the river. Look how easily I moved aside the poison pieces that were in the way. I can put them back after the skeletons have moved out. And there we go. The forest and the river and the poison pieces look like they originally did before the unit moved through them. Now that deserves a replay. Now I did consider making these river segments out of sheet metal in the same way that I did those forests. But there are some major disadvantages to that approach. First, sheet metal is much more expensive than Plasticard, especially steel sheet metal, which has better magnetic properties than aluminum. So not only will the cost go up, but you won't be motivated to make such a large variety pack of river segments like I did with Plasticard. Another disadvantage to sheet metal is that it is hard to cut. Cutting those 6 by 6 inch squares for my forest was difficult enough, even with a strong pair of metal shears. I can't imagine cutting all kinds of irregular shapes for river segments out of metal. Cutting Plasticard is probably 10 times easier than sheet metal. Cutting that much sheet metal would probably quickly demotivate even the most ambitious terrain modeler. But of course there's no magnetic advantage to using Plasticard. Now here's an idea for creating more 3D features for your Plasticard rivers. Here I have modeled some shrubs that I can place along the shoreline. I also glued together a few sticks in order to create a log jam, as you can see on the left. Here we have a demon bloodletter that's come down to the river to see how he's going to navigate across it. Now for me, those shrubs are probably going to be mainly just for decoration, and just like with the trees on the forest base plates, they could be moved in order to facilitate a unit that needs to cross the river, and then just placed back after they've moved through. Now this demon has moved downstream a little bit. He's going to check out this log jam, and he's considering crossing the river right there. He doesn't want to step into the poison river as much as anybody else would want to. Here I have a longer view of the river that I built for this scenario. There's the log jam and the shrubbery that's on the left side of the screen. And then on the upper right I have some boulders. I just picked some rocks from outside that I placed there to represent a bouldered section of the stream. So that's another idea of how you can add some 3D effects to this 2D Plasticard river. So let me go ahead and wrap this up. The biggest advantages of making rivers out of Plasticard is first that Plasticard is moderately cheap and easy to work with and can be painted on both sides. This opens up unlimited varieties of shapes, modular ability, and modifications that you could come up with. And since they are a 2D surface, or two-dimensional, they are super playable on the battlefield, causing no problems whatsoever when you need to move units through the rivers. And then, as I suggested, it is possible to place 3D features like boulders, logs, and brush on the rivers or nearby them if you want to take the aesthetics a little further. But there are some disadvantages to Plasticard rivers. As you can see, they don't look as nice as 3D rivers. If you are in pursuit of realism, then this is probably not the best approach for you. However, I'm sure a better artist could have made these pieces look way better than I did, but I still think there are some limits to what can be achieved with this material. I mean, I think those ice chunks look fine, but the fire pieces fall short of impressive. A second disadvantage to Plasticard is that it can actually be easily bumped out of position by a careless or shaky hand, or even by a poorly aimed dice roll. But I can't really think of an option out there that would not be subject to those kinds of problems, except for maybe carving a river right into the surface of a styrofoam tile. Another disadvantage of Plasticard is that it may not be as found as easily as other materials. It can certainly be found online, but it is maybe not quite as cheap as paper products like cardstock or thicker options like chipboard. But Plasticard is still going to be cheaper than buying modular river models or using expensive materials like sheet metal. I also thought about using other materials for this same project. There's fabrics like hobby grade felt, but unless you pin the river segments down to the table beneath, it's going to be very difficult to keep the rivers stationary as you move your units across them. And it's also going to be difficult to paint or decorate fabric or felt. I've also seen thin little foam sheets, and I've tried to use thin foam before, and it just doesn't really paint well in my experience. And you're still going to struggle keeping the river segments stationary during gameplay. So there's certainly a few drawbacks to making rivers out of Plasticard, but overall it is still my favorite option, and I am very happy with how it looks and how it performs during gameplay. And as I said previously, these rivers are mainly conceptual for me, but I did try my best to balance gameplay practicality with aesthetics, and also modular variety. Add to that the low expense. And I believe I achieved the best of all four considerations. So I hope this video will help you with your river terrain making projects, and I will catch you soon on my next video. Thanks for watching, and happy wargaming!